Can't use the song, that would be wrong, 'cause it could get us copyright struck, and that would suck, but such is life.
Hello and good evening, everybody. My name is Nathan Marchand, the host of such podcasts as the Monster Island Film Vault, which is this channel, as well as Henshin Men, because I will be sharing the audio of this in the Henshin Men feed just to keep that feed going while I'm trying to get the final episode, the final episode of this iteration put together. And with me is the Omni Viewer, Ryan Collins, and Snazzy. And hopefully, I will be sending you the video of this to share on your channel, but it will be going off live on the Film Vault channel tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So great to have you guys on. It's always a pleasure.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. And this is actually it's semi-impromptu, admittedly, because we're here to talk about Ultraman Blazar, the new Ultra series from Tsuburaya that just wrapped up last week. And literally, I finished the episode, and I guess we must have started around the same time. And then I get a text message from you saying, if you do an episode on this, I want in. I'm at least going to do a video. I'm like, how about we just combine them? So that's what we're doing. So this is, like I said, it's a little bit of a bonus episode, MIFV Live, I guess you could call it. But yeah, so Ultraman Blazar.
Yep. It was a shorter Ultra series, but
I don't know how familiar you've been with the newer stuff, but this is kind of the going rate.
Well, you've recently been going on about how Cosmos was longer than usual.
Good. Yeah, Cosmos was 65 episodes, but that was early 2000s, 20 years ago. The trend with new generation heroes, which started in, I want to it's 2013 with Ginga. They've been going about 25, usually somewhere in that range, mid 20s.
Which used to be the standard length for anime, but anime shortened it to 13.
Yeah, basically. Go figure on that. Now, Toei still goes 50 episodes because Toei's crazy. They also make about 10 million tie-in movies and specials, some of which are not canon. It's confusing. So, so there, if you still want your 50 episode Toku shows, that's where you have to go, is Toei. But Tsuburaya has been doing the 25 episodes or so. That's how it's been since I started watching the simulcast on YouTube in 2020 with Ultraman Z, Ultraman Z, however you want to say it. It's a letter Z, people. And in America, we say Z, but yeah, whatever on that one. But they've been about 25 episodes apiece.
Well, all the same, for the length, it made the best of it.
Mm-hmm. So. Mm-hmm. Is this the first one of the YouTube simulcast shows that you've watched?
Yeah, when I first subscribed to the Tsuburaya YouTube page, when I actually discovered that it even existed, they were already kind of in the middle of a particular series. I don't know if that's the one where they introduced the King Joe storage custom or not, because I remember seeing
that would have been Z as Ultraman Z.
Probably. So I was just like, oh, well, I don't know if I quite put together. I was just like, well, something to keep an eye on anyway, see future projects and whatnot. When I realized there were actual shows up there, I was like, well, it's a little late for me to be getting into this one with each new thing, but we'll see. And sometimes I check out some episodes and I'd be like, yeah, this is not grabbing me for reasons we'll be getting into, of course.
Right. But if you want to go back and watch any of them, you can now make a free account on Ultraman Connection and watch those VOD.
Well, maybe. But or I can just wait and see if they get some DVD releases over here too.
Yeah, well, Ultraman Connection is a great website. I'm friends with Mr. Gomez, who runs the thing. He's a cool fella, and it's a great website. It keeps you up to date on all of the Ultraman news, and they will do special events and for a lot of the finale movies for all the shows that they've been doing the last couple of years.
So it's
They're not up on YouTube, but you can go to Ultraman Connection, and for a small fee, you can rent them.
Well, something to look into anyway.
Yeah, for sure. So this was the first one that you started.
Yeah, as it was going, of course. I've seen some of the older ones, of course. Classic one.
I was going to say, I was going to tell everybody what our history is with Ultraman. Well, what is yours, Omni?
Well, I was familiar with Ultraman as a kid, but like that was back before streaming and on demand and whatnot. So you had to know the show was going to be on in order to see it, and I wasn't always that lucky. Actually, I think one of my first exposures to it was I was visiting family, and it was an episode of Ultra 7 that was dubbed. That doesn't exist
anymore.
Yeah,
on TNT.
Yeah, those don't exist anymore, but where'd he go? Anyway, let's see. It was a little while after that I started picking up the DVDs, the classic shows of what were already out there, specifically Ultraman, Ultra 7, and Ultra Q, but as they've been coming out, I've been picking up on them, getting some of the movies like Ultraman Zarth. Zarth. They pronounce it Zarth in the movie, I thought.
I know, it's confusing.
But anyway, which was actually those movies were the first official Ultraman thing I did for the channel. And, just as a kaiju fan, it's a nice way to get a full kaiju story without necessarily spending a movie length going for it. If you just need a quick fix, basically.
Yeah. I was putting you in the solo layout there, since you were the one talking. But my first exposure to Ultraman, and I've shared this story a few other places, was I remember reading about the Ultraman franchise in G-Fan magazine, but they basically said like almost none of it is even available for people to watch. So as interesting as it seemed, I was like, well, I'm probably never going to get a chance to see it. And then Tiga was brought over by 4Kids, infamously.
That dub no longer exists either.
Yeah, well, it doesn't.
It probably exists somewhere, but not on the official DVD release we got.
No, but there was a very intrepid fan who reconstructed it using the I think it was the Japanese Blu-ray, like excising the footage and then running the English audio over it. Went to great lengths to do it. And so other than a few parts that the filmmaker, that 4Kids edited themselves, which he couldn't recreate, so when it gets to those bits, it will cut to what looks like was ripped from a VHS that recorded it off a TV. But so regardless, that was my first exposure. I watched that a few times. And then I remember grabbing a couple of DVD sets of the original show from I can't remember who released them right now. I think it was BCI, but it was pre Mill Creek. And I wanted to get the Shout sets, but I wasn't able to get to those. And then Mill Creek started going nuts, and then I just started gobbling them up because I fell in love with the franchise. So I basically have everything that Mill Creek has released, and I'm really hankering for them to release some more. Because Tsuburaya is pushing Ultraman hard right now, hence these simulcasts. To be honest, I know that there have been some criticisms of the Mill Creek sets with some of their quality control issues and all that, and I get it, but the fact that they've been cranking out as much as they have, as fast as they have, is impressive, because their goal is to make Ultraman an international brand. Hence why they're doing these international live streams, simulcasts. And they've done these things that I've watched where they will have different. They did this thing where there were different Ultraman characters who would actually address fans in different countries by speaking their language. It was really interesting. So they definitely want to get this out there for everybody.
That plus the Marvel comics and whatever that thing is on Netflix that's coming.
I don't. I'm going to do an episode on that with Mr. Gomez. I may have to contain myself a little bit because I'm not expecting it's going to be great, but I'm open to being wrong. I want to be wrong.
And we'll find out. But anyway,
we'll find out.
Anyway, this episode's about Blazar.
Yeah, we're talking about Blazar. But yeah, so I've got and for everybody who's watching this, feel free to leave comments in the chat. We will be more than happy to interact with you. But I do have a handful of little discussion questions and points here that we can go over. And unfortunately, it's not as easy to see it, unless this is full screen. So I'm going to have to switch between full screen and not full screen so I can keep track of the chat. So you and I came up with a bunch of different points that we could go over. These aren't in any particular order. So just trying to think where to start with this. A lot of the stuff that is on here has to do with the end of the show, which I think we can save until a little bit later.
Yeah.
But the first question I would like to ask you is, did you watch this sub or dub? The classic question.
It really depended. I think most of it I watched dubbed, but every once in a while I'd hop on to start the episode and it's like, oh, they haven't processed the dub or something because it's subtitled. So, okay, I can watch this subtitled.
I think it takes about an hour or so for the dub to show up. So if you watch it live, it's only Japanese. And if you watch it immediately afterward, which is what I did with the first episode, the dub wasn't available. So I watched it subtitled the first time, but then when I saw that the dub was available, I rewatched it with the dub because my boy Johnny Young Bosch is in it. So
I actually briefly met him at a convention nearby.
Oh man, I'd love to meet him someday. I mean, he's a multi-talented guy. He's a voice actor. He's a screen actor because he famously was in Power Rangers for several seasons. And he's been in a lot of anime and video games. He has a band. He's a martial artist. My gosh, this guy is so talented. So when I heard that he was going to be in this and he was going to be Gento, he's going to dub for Gento. So I'm like, first he was a Power Ranger, now he is an Ultraman.
and in between he was Vash the Stampede and V Britannia.
And Ichigo in Bleach. So he's done a lot. He's done a lot. So, and I did watch one episode without the dub because I was watching it with a friend who didn't watch the dub. So I'm like, okay, that's fine. We can watch it without the dub. Yeah. It's okay. And of course, I still think the acting in Japanese is actually really good. I was surprised how good the dub was, though.
Yeah, because you don't expect live action dubs to be good these days,
right? Yeah, as I typically don't go for dubs with live action anymore. I usually go with it for anime because it's just easier to do it with anime. But so unless I think the dub is really terrible, I will actually go to the dub first and stick with the dub. Like currently, because I missed out on most of it because I didn't grow up with cable television, I'm watching Outlaw Star right now.
That's a good
and one. I'm watching that with the dub. And but so far the dub has been good enough that I'm going to keep watching it.
Although its spin-off Angel Links has a terrible dub. Ironically,
I don't know where I can see that, but yeah, I will definitely keep that.
I was lucky and found a box set recently.
Okay.
So I, Physical media for the win, as always.
Yes, physical media for the win. That's one of my New Year's resolutions is to just buy up as much physical media as possible, whether it's DVDs, Blu-rays, CDs, books. Books I'm especially concerned about. It's to the point now where my sister for Christmas will buy me, like I said, like I was getting mad about the whole Roald Dahl thing, and I didn't have any of his books. I was just getting mad as an author at the censorship that was going on. So now my sister just buys me older editions of Roald Dahl books so I can make sure they're preserved.
Yeah. And
now, like, well, now I got to go get the Ian Fleming James Bond books because now they're going to muck around with those and just.
And of course, now there are Ultraman books in English as well.
Yes.
The first one.
Yeah. So there you go. So that was pretty. So, I was very happy with the dub here. And it seems like Super was working really hard to make the dub good. They dubbed Ultraman Z because of how popular it was. So I have to give them credit. They're working really, they're working really hard with this. The dub for Shin Ultraman was actually really good as well. I was pleasantly surprised by that. So, like I said, they're working really hard to make this as available as possible.
Yeah.
But let's talk a bit about Gento. Gento is a bit of a departure for Ultra Series.
Yeah.
Because he's the actual captain and he's the Ultra host.
Mm-hmm.
Not only that, he's a family man because he has a wife and a son.
Who don't know that he's part of Scarred.
Yeah.
Or at least as far as he knows, they don't.
Yeah. And I have only seen a setup remotely close to this one other time in the Ultra franchise, and that was the movie Ultraman the Next. Which didn't have a quote unquote science patrol team in it, but the Ultra host in that was a family man.
Yep. Guy who, although that movie was super dark compared to Blazar, so.
You say that, but we'll get into it, but that first episode, I'm like, is this how the whole show is going to be? This is like Ultraman Nexus all over again.
I just mean like Gento's son is healthy.
So. Yeah. Well, but we'll get into this. So this is a big departure because normally it's just somebody on the team. Although in the case of Nexus, I'm rewatching Nexus right now with my brother who hasn't seen it before.
Just a random guy.
Yeah, it's not somebody on the team. So the Ultraman, and that really is a wild card. So they're like, we don't know who this guy is or what he's doing, so there's no case of, well, oh, I have a secret identity, I'll be back, guys. I'm not actually dead, he saved me. Well, in this case, I
think I've read in interviews they said they did that partly because they realized it's easy for the team leader to just step aside for a moment while everyone else is doing stuff,
right?
So
right, but it also puts a little bit of a level of pressure on there, because he really has to decide, okay, when do I do this?
Yeah,
because I still need to lead my team.
And about halfway through, they get chewed out. Like Ultraman Blazar always steps in. Have you guys actually beaten a kaiju by yourselves yet?
Yep.
So
it gets called out. Yeah, which is not the first time I've seen that happen.
No.
In the franchise, because there have been other times where they're like, you guys are useless. It's just Ultraman who fixes the problem.
That was all the way back in the first Ultraman.
Mm-hmm.
Towards the end, there's that point. I forget exactly which episode, but I think it's one of the Pigmon ones where they're like, why am I even bothering making this new device? Ultraman's just going to step in and save us. But then it's Hayata. It's Hayata, right? Who says, Ultraman doesn't just step in to save us. He steps in when we've done everything we possibly can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there was one of the I can't remember. I think it was Gaia. I want to say where there was actually they had some kids on their base and they were giving them a little tour, and one of the kids actually asked, was like, "Yeah, how do you know when Gaia is going to show? When Ultraman is going to show up and help you guys out? Why don't you just let him solve the problem?" And the person being asked is the actual Ultra host, and he has to come up with this little, a similar sort of answer right there, but it's being directed at a kid to reassure him. It's like, no, Ultraman wants us to do our best first, and then when it's necessary, he steps in, that sort of a thing. It's an interesting way of looking.
And even early in Ultraman Max, the host that like it's the third episode, isn't it, where he gets offended that people don't trust Ultraman Max right off the bat. So as they're going after the bird monster, he says, "All right, I'm just gonna fly right at it, and then I'll summon Max, and everyone will see." And Max refuses to show up. So,
yeah. So that really it throws a bit of a monkey wrench into the formula, but there's a lot of things that kind of muck around with the formula in this, which we'll unpack a little bit. Otherwise,
it also affects his health towards the end.
Yes, yeah,
that's another.
Which is not the first time we've seen that. We've seen other points where, depending on the show, the host will share the same injuries as the Ultraman. So if like Ultraman gets his leg hurt while fighting a monster, when he unhenshins, the host is like, "Oh, my leg!" Yeah,
and sometimes reverse, like what Tiga did. There was those certain things where Daigo's arm was hurt. When he turns into Tiga, he'll do this brief thing where he checks his arm to see if he can use it. So
yeah, or in Ultraman Leo, you had Ultra 7. I can't. Dan Moriboshi came back, and he got hurt in the first episode, and then he couldn't transform anymore, and then he spends the rest of the show walking around with a cane.
But then, in this particular series, it's not so much that like I get an injury, Ultraman gets an injury, or vice versa. It's more like his health just gradually deteriorates. So
yeah, his relation with Blazar is a little strange. It's probably, compared to the last few shows, like the other ones that have been getting simulcast, this is probably the most impersonal that I've seen, because the other ones, they're interacting directly with the Ultra. They're talking to them, when they're not transformed, or when they actually henshin. It looks like they're in this kind of pocket dimension, and that's where they can put in like the coins and stuff in the transformation device. Oh, look, toys, and get power-ups or alt modes or something like that. There's a lot of interaction. Not quite so much here. It's a little bit more like what you saw in I would say, like the early Heisei period, or a lot of the Heisei period. That's fresh in my mind because that's where I am in my viewing right now. Because I like Tiga Dynagaya, it was like that. It's like that in Nexus. There's some strange similarities between this and Nexus, I have to say.
He does try communicating with Blazar a couple times.
He does, and what I found really interesting with their relationship is there was that weird couple of episodes where suddenly Blazar is hitting himself in the face. And I was like, wait, is that Gento telling him, no, you can't kill the monster? Actually, you find out later it's not Gento, which surprised me a little bit. It was actually Blazar saying, no, don't do that. So like, wait a minute, who's actually in charge here when this happens? Because I've always interpreted it as, when the host has not transformed, that's him for the most part. And when the transformation happens, that's the Ultra coming through. But in this case, it didn't seem like that. So I was a little confused on that. How'd you feel about it?
There was it felt like there was more of a melding, I guess. And we also saw every once in a while Blazar would start to eke out through Gento while Gento was just normal. That moment where, like, when he's at home, he's watching TV and suddenly his eyes change.
Yes.
So,
yeah,
it made him feel a bit more alien in a way, in a different way than how Shin Ultraman was alien.
Yeah.
Did you see that comic somebody drew of the 2 ways to make Ultraman alien? Shin version, Shin Ultraman's just standing there, and then Blazar version, Shin Ultraman's still standing there, but Blazar's bouncing around him going, rah, 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 and a thought bubble appears above Shin's head because I'm quite fond of him.
Yeah, Blazar is one of the strangest Ultras I've seen in a long time. In the first episode, the first thing that came to my mind was, man, you're loud.
Yeah.
Because he just screams at the monster.
Bazanga.
Yeah, Bazanga, which sounds like a joke. Bazanga. But he screamed at the monster. I was just like, why are you so loud? And then, but then he looks like he kind of like throws a tantrum or something like that. But then right after he transforms or right after he kills a monster, it looks like he prays.
And that's tying into him being the primitive Ultra, another one of our talking points.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what people have been interpreting it. So it's almost like he's a caveman. He's a hunter.
And with a serious wound on his head. That's what that glowing part's supposed to be, apparently.
I guess. See, here's the thing that threw me off. Because when I first heard the name and I saw the initial images, like this one here, that was such a great trailer. It's a very atmospheric trailer. And I thought they were going with a fire motif with him. Because this part on the left side of his face, it looks like flames. So I was like, oh, it must be fire. His name is Blazar. No, a Blazar is a term in astronomy. That's where they got the name. So I'm like, okay, I guess I was completely wrong. And there's a lot of unanswered questions about Blazar. Because they don't really delve too much into his origin beyond the first episode or two. And they just said like, oh yeah, that's Ultraman. This kind of like legend among like astronauts.
The final episode, like, not to get too ahead of ourselves, but that garbled message the V99 send does say Land of Light briefly. So
I noticed that, yeah.
So it's like, does that mean he's from the same... Does that mean the other Ultras exist here as well in some form? Or
if they did, I think they would have known it. Supro has basically been doing the multiverse thing for about 20 years now. So they'll make separate shows, but basically they just say that the Ultras are such an advanced civilization that they can not only travel through space, but they can also dimension hop, which is why they can have the other characters show up, and do crossovers and things like that. So I don't know where that puts Blazar in this case, because this one was kept very self-contained. You could because people, I've had some people, wonders like, hey, how much do I need to know about Ultraman to watch Blazar? I was like, you don't really need to know anything because it doesn't really have ties to anything else. I mean, generally speaking, the other Ultra shows keep to themselves, but there is still that sense of it's part of something larger. Where this one is like no ties to anything else.
They occasionally do vague Easter eggs, like when Red King and it's Gigas, right? Red King and Gigas show up. They say, oh, this is the same monster that appeared back in the 1960s.
Yeah.
What a coincidence when Red King first appeared.
Right.
So they throw in little things like that. And there was like over on Big Bad Toy Store, there was a pre-order for a Blazar figure and an original Ultraman figure packaged together, and the OG Ultraman was in a cape. And I saw that, and I originally thought, oh, so there have been several spoilers revealed through the toys throughout. I wonder if that's somehow hinting that the original Ultraman's going to show up. Didn't happen.
No. No, although you said that you heard rumors that that apparently Supro toyed with having Nexus show up.
I've heard it mentioned. I don't know where that comes from myself. I think the theory that I heard proposed was that since Blazar seems to be more primitive and his battle pose looks like he's offering up a prayer of some sort, and you look back and you see that Ultraman Nexus / Noah is as close to being a god as an Ultra can possibly get, it was thought that maybe Nexus or Noah was gonna show up and be like the Ultra above Blazar. But like I said, I don't know where that came from. I don't know if it was just a random thing. Somebody was.
I would be all for Nexus showing up, but Nexus is one of my favorite entries in the entire franchise. Mind you, I haven't seen all of it, but it's still one of my favorites. So real quick, we've got a couple of comments here I just wanted to bring up. So we have a Mac Wade. He just says, hey, Omni.
Hello.
He said that about 10 minutes before we started. And then we have Enshoma in the chat right now, and he says, and Blazar replies with Gento getting self-slapped Blazar. Sleep, dummy! And then my friend, listener, and MIFV Max member on Patreon, Jake Hambrick, he says, what's up, guys? I don't have great signal, so I probably won't be able to stay long, and I really enjoy Blazar, and it's one of my favorite Ultraman designs.
It is a great design, especially in the dark like that.
Yeah. It's a great silhouette. And that's something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. It's like if you're an artist and you're trying to make a unique character, if you can, the way you know you have a good design is that you can still recognize the character when all you can see is the silhouette.
That's the silhouette.
Yeah. So you look at something like you look at the Simpsons characters and you like, I know exactly who they are just by the silhouette. It's not hard, which is a criticism I've heard lobbed against Ultraman designs, because the argument is that their silhouettes aren't all that different, at least with some of them. I mean, yeah, Zoffy and Jack and the original, basically the same silhouettes, but Seven does not have the same silhouette. Ace doesn't have the same silhouette. Taro and Leo don't have the same silhouette.
Tiga and Gaia, maybe. It depends on what angle you're looking at the head from.
But Nexus doesn't have the same, doesn't have the same silhouette. But I would argue it's like, yeah, but you could say that about basically a large chunk. They don't want to admit it, but a large chunk of Sentai and Power Rangers, you can say that. There are still some Kamen Riders that you could say that about. Kamen Riders probably fared a little bit better in that regard in terms of having recognizable silhouettes, but
heck,
still, I mean,
some American superheroes.
Yeah. And then the other criticism lobbed against them is like they keep using the same colors all the time, and I'm like, so.
Well, I mean, they're red because that's a kabuki thing, right? In kabuki theater, you denote the hero because he's got red in his costume. That carried over here. I'm the hero too, by the way.
Yeah. Oh, I can tell. Although you used to wear blue. You wore blue for a while.
For a brief time.
Yeah, and then you had that, and then you had the weird phase where you had the coat.
Yeah.
I miss it.
The Distorter stole it. I'm still not sure where he went with it.
But
anyway, Blazar is gray with red and blue.
Yeah, well, he's got all kinds of colors on him. His design's kind of wild, to be honest. He's I think he's primarily silver and blue. I would say primarily.
Yeah, but he's got like the red zigzag going down the one.
Yeah.
And then he eventually gets the fire gauntlet that adds some orange.
Which is the closest we get to an alt mode in this, which is something I really appreciate. We'll unpack that a little bit later. But the rest of the characters that we follow in this, it's a pretty standard. That sounds reductionist, but it's a pretty standard kind of set of characters you expect to see in an Ultra series as part of the Science Patrol team. They fit into certain archetypes, and you see them all there. You have the no nonsense girl, the cute girl who's hyper feminine, and then a couple other guys. There's like the tech guy, the weapons guy. And in this case, is it the tech guy? No, the tech guy is kind of the goofball.
There's a second in command on this team.
Yeah. Well, there's always a vice captain.
Yeah. But we do get to know them pretty well, don't we? Especially Henri. She got a surprising number of episodes devoted to her.
Yeah. And didn't you say that you made some jokes in some of your videos on the show? We were like, she's become the waifu already.
To a certain degree, yeah. She is an interesting.
Like I said, she's the token cute one. Like I've watched enough Ultra shows, I could tell you there's always a token cute girl in it.
Although the other one's Emmy, right? I don't want to get the names confused. Towards the end of the show, she gets a lot of attention too, because she's actually closely tied to the myth arc of the series.
It's because it involves her dad.
Yeah. And that goes to some really interesting places. Or I think the one who gets the least amount of attention is actually the tech guy.
Yeah, except he had that. Except he had the weird episode where a washing machine came to life.
Yeah, although weirdly enough, they did kind of make it work in context.
Oh, they did make it work in context, but it was still probably the wackiest episode of the show.
Yeah.
Although that episode was for the ladies. That guy is jacked.
Yeah, no kidding.
When he's like panicking and taking the shirt off for that awkward comedy moment, I'm just like, holy steroids, sir. Where did you find those?
And he's supposed to be the nerdy one.
Yeah, go figure on that. But yeah, I've also seen some pictures of, I can't remember which of the actresses it was, but or like she was wearing, I can't remember if it was a swimsuit or if it was workout attire, but she was in really good shape too. So and it was a joke. Somebody was just like, everybody in Blazar is in really good shape. There are no ugly people on this show. I mean, it's TV people. Well, I don't know. Some of the monsters might qualify, but I'm sure Snazzy's got opinions about that. Much different opinions.
Oh, I can't even look at the Ganular.
Well,
only a mother could love him.
Oh, well, yeah, well, I'm sure we'll talk a bit about the monsters as well in this, but let's talk about the rejection of toyetic elements. I did a Henshin Men episode not long ago on the Kamen Rider versus Ultraman special with another YouTuber who goes by the name SoundOut12. His channel is dedicated to toy and physical media reviews. He's a big Toku fan. And he told me that it was kind of sneaky because I initially thought, especially watching that first episode, because the first episode is really different from most of the rest of the show. It was very atmospheric, very dark, very cinematic, clearly had money thrown at it. And then after that, the show wasn't quite like that, except for some episodes here and there. And I'm like, man, sometimes I almost wish that the whole show was like that. But what can you do?
We'll get to the variants in a moment.
Yeah, we'll get to the variants. But very quickly it establishes, we're not really doing the Bandai mandates, guys, which is kind of like this big joke now especially in Toku fandom, but the Bandai mandates where we gotta put in the things to show off the toys because we're gonna use the toys as props, which I will admit, when I first started watching Z, having not been used to that, it really threw me off. It was like, that is clearly the toy, guys. This is not a case of like how in Power Rangers the toys look so good you could pass them off as the props because that's what they did out of necessity. But here it's very clearly the toys. They weren't really doing that. Nope. And I loved it. And that's why, it takes 17, 18 episodes before Blazar gets a real power up and anything close to resembling an alt mode. And I was like, I'm so glad about that. But I was told by SoundOut it's because Tsuburaya got a little sneaky. They basically rushed Blazar into production so fast that by the time Bandai came with notes, they're like, sorry guys, we already started. Oh, well, I guess we'll just have a lot of kaiju in the toy line. And guess what? They still made it. Dang. And then they still made a crap ton of money.
Yeah. Especially with this guy.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
Yeah, I think everybody knew Earth Garen was going to be popular.
Yeah. I mean, he's a giant robot dinosaur who, is the Robin to Blazar's Batman. What's not to love?
But they didn't necessarily go out of their way to make him a toy. They just made him cool. And then the toy sells itself.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope Bandai learns from this. It's like, you know what? Maybe we should just get out of the artist's way, let them do what they want, and we'll still make money.
They did occasionally find ways. Like, obviously, the Blazar stone was there from the beginning, the bracelet that he uses. But, that's like a data capsule.
I was going to say, they don't make a big deal out of it all that much. It's obvious. I mean, the prop is the toy, but they spend so little time focused on it that I feel it's more forgivable compared to a lot of the other ones that they've done.
The only time in Blazar I felt that it pushed into toy commercial territory was when the Chalcedonite sword got introduced. That felt like they were going like, ooh, let's get some close-ups to show it off. Let's do this weird impractical thing where you pull the lever and the thing spins, which is totally something a sword does. It's
I think the idea is that he does that to power it up.
Yeah, but like it makes the lights and sounds, and that's a point where it was like, okay, clearly Bandai stepped in at this point and said, give him this. He uses it. But like that was just the one episode. And then the next time they did it, when they had Fardron come in and again do the closest thing we have to an alt mode, it felt organic again. It didn't feel like it was pushing it. Same thing with Earth Garen's various upgrades. It makes sense that you would have those upgrades because, he's a giant robot. More threats he faces, the more weapons he's going to need to take care of them. So it's naturally worked in. Of course, they're not going to sell all of those upgrades with the figure just up front. You're going to have to do some shopping around to get stuff like the over-the-shoulder turrets. But again...
Yes, and Shoma, we went over that. You must have left that comment because I've had this on full screen. I should probably stay off of full screen here for a little bit. But we went over that. There are no ugly people in the show.
Nope.
Yeah, we know. Yeah. And Jake Hamburg here reminds me of Billy from MMPR, LOL, a jack nerd who could be the leader. Yeah. Let's be honest. David Yost is the buffest nerd ever. Anyway, well, I take it back. He's second. Henry Cavill is the buffest nerd ever. Henry Cavill. I will still defend him as Superman. He was just given subpar scripts. That's
and he got tricked with Black Adam, but anyway.
Moving on. So
this is about Superman.
So they're rejecting the toyetic thing, and I was so appreciative of it because I'm like, guys, you don't need to make these obvious toy commercials.
Yeah.
Just make a good show. I mean, I know people rag on a lot of 80s and to a certain extent 90s shows, cartoons and kid shows for doing that, but I'm like, yeah, but when I watch G.I. Joe or I watch Transformers, it's not obvious that it's quote unquote a toy commercial. It's more like, it always feels more like the show is saying, hey, those toys you like? Here's a story about them.
Yeah.
They're going to go off and do cool stuff. Oh, by the way, in case you didn't know, here's a new character and his toy is over at the toy store. So you can go get that one. So you may not have that one yet, but hey, new toy, And
when they put the effort in, it really shows.
I mean Peter Cullen took Optimus Prime so seriously. Like maybe it started as just a job for Peter Cullen, but it evolved into something else. I mean, and Hasbro learned that the hard way when they killed off Optimus and most of the cast in the movie.
Generation.
and traumatized everyone because they didn't realize they had a pop culture icon on their hands with Optimus Prime and to a lesser extent the other characters.
So when later Transformers things did it, they really they approached it differently. Dinobots plot and Beast Wars. I mean, dang.
Yeah, well, Beast Wars was done for budgetary reasons. Because at that point CGI, I mean, we look at that show now and it just looks quaint, but back then it was state of the art. It was expensive, especially trying to do it on television. And so, even though Mainframe was like, oh, we love the toys and we want to have as many characters in there, they realized they could only have so many. So then they told the writers like, hey, we can only have so many characters because that's the limits of the technology and budget that we have. And they're like, okay, pick the best ones and we're going to go nuts making these characters amazing.
Yeah. Point is, being toyetic isn't necessarily a fault. It's how you go about doing it.
And the argument can be made that all of the, basically, I would say at least since the 60s, these Toku franchises and even Godzilla to a certain extent have had an element of that to them once the studios realized they could merchandise these things and make a ton more money.
Yeah, it's understood that these things make for cool collectibles and action figures. It's when you lean only on that being toyetic becomes a bit of an issue. Like, I mean, that's what brought down Batman and Robin back in the 90s. That at the beginning of every shoot, Joel Schumacher said, "Remember, everyone, we're making a toy movie," because that's what the studio told him to do. And they paid for it. Boy, did they.
Yep, there is only one actor in that movie who's having any sort of fun and not phoning it in. And his name is Arnold. Go figure on that.
He kicks ice.
Ice to meet you. I mean, come on. The guy's just walking around in a ridiculous, like a bad Power Ranger costume. Well, like a ridiculous Power Ranger costume, and just saying ice puns, and he's still having a good time. He's the only reason I ever bother watching that movie, because at least he's enjoying himself. We got a comment here from Enshoma along those lines. He says, it was nice to get a simple adventure show with a single robot like Earthy over bloated / hyperactive toy catalogs like the superfluous multitudes of mecha in most Super Sentai seasons. Amen to that. As the, one of the co-hosts of the Power Trip, I can tell you, there were certain seasons where it's just like, you guys are getting ridiculous, and but then there were certain ones where I'm like, I love the beautiful simplicity of this. One of note would be Zhu Ranger / the Mighty Morphin season 1, where there are 7 mecha. That's it, and they all combine together at some point or another. But it was so beautiful. Yeah, just 7, and then you had In Space / Mega Ranger, where their first mecha isn't even a combiner; it's just a spaceship that transforms.
Yeah.
It's so wonderfully simple. I love it.
Blazar got back to that. I actually noticed in the final episode when it comes down to that crucial moment of convincing the V99 that this invasion shouldn't happen. Earth Garon disposes of all of his upgrades. Blazar gets rid of the sword and Fardron and everything. And they're back to the way they were in episode 1 episode 3 for Earthy, before they got all those upgrades that may or may not have been toy motivated. And interestingly, once the invasion's called off and they still have to deal with Valeron, they don't pick him back up. They just stay as they originally were. So that's something that really stood out to me. It's like, okay, that really does show that this wasn't made for selling toys,
right?
They started by getting back to basics, and that's how they ended too.
Yeah, it's the idea here is what's the word I'm looking for? It's the toys, the products is a byproduct of it. Again, let the artist make a good show, you're gonna make money.
Yeah, the stuff will sell itself. I'm jealous that you have the Earth Garon, and I want an Earth Garon, not because I was given a commercial every week watching the show. It's because Earth Garon is just cool. Yeah. Even though he doesn't always have the best fight record.
No, but I think that's kind of the point. I mean, it's not his show. Let's be honest.
We have to.
Not his show. Too bad we can't get the dub version.
Yeah.
But that was actually, I want to talk about that really quick, because this was something that you talked about frequently in any of your videos, because you ended up being kind of right, because you were a big fan of Earth Garon from the start, and you're like, I wonder what they're going to do with him. Will he actually have a personality? Does he actually have an AI? Blah, blah, blah. And then Yeah, you ended up being
Turns
right.
out he kind of does.
Yeah.
Or it didn't really come to the forefront until much later in the series when he was given a voice and everything. But we got our first hint of it in that weird one with the washing machine where the alien Kanan take over all the machines.
I just love that sentence was just uttered in that weird one with the washing machine. Anyway.
Only in the Ultra series, folks.
Super Sentai would do something silly like that. Super Sentai literally had a purse monster, but anyway.
Anyway, like you have those early on hints, and then suddenly he's given a voice. He becomes a proper character, and then it ties into the whole underlying story, the question of why he was made in the first place, because clearly he was already built. And I also speculated, why call him Earth Garon specifically when just Garon would do? And turns out he's made because he is protecting Earth from these aliens that were considered a threat, at least at the beginning. And it's really interesting to see how, despite the fact that he's technically not the main character, he develops in such interesting ways throughout the series and even becomes the one who saves the world at the very end. Do we want to get to that yet, or
I think we can talk about a few other things because the ending for this is pretty interesting. I do want to spend at least a little bit of time talking about the monsters in this. Because I feel like, the monsters are a little all over the place. I don't think any of them are bad, I would say. Some are definitely more interesting than others. I can tell you there was really only probably one where I'm like, after I finished it, like, I need the toy of that one. Oh, I can't remember what. It's the one from their first two-parter with the really long, insane name.
Ichikagachi?
Yeah, that one I'm like, I need a toy of that.
And that's
and you were a fan, and you were a fan of that two-parter. You went so far as to call it the superior Shin Godzilla, which that's your opinion, not mine. I would just like to throw that out there.
If people don't know,
I'm nice to Shin Godzilla.
If people don't know how I feel about that movie by now, then I don't know.
We don't have to rehash that.
Yeah, but like. Yeah, Nichikagachi was very interesting because, like, they play on the idea of him being a living storm, tying into mythologies about rainbow serpents, all this that interesting stuff they do with the design of, like, he has that face shield at first that looks like a weird segment of a triceratops skull that can unfold, revealing even more colors and his actual face. The figure does a weird paint job where the inside of that is just like the Ukrainian flag, but like the actual.
Oh man!
On top,
given current events, oh man.
But that's just the figure. Inside the actual, the actual suit, it's like a whole array of colors. Yeah, Nichikagachi's cool.
Yeah, I'm trying to find. I've got the Ultra Wiki page
right
here.
Yeah, right in the middle.
This one? No,
both of them.
Yeah. The two forms. I hope we can. There we go. We actually get a picture. This thing is wild.
Yeah,
this thing is just wild, and I think, that's when the face shield comes off. It almost looks like Mothra wings underneath. To be honest,
kind of, yeah.
Yeah, but he definitely looks like a rainbow serpent. I can say that. And he
came back as a ghost.
Yeah, he did. Yeah, and which is interesting that he's the rainbow serpent, because I've heard that there are actually some Native American legends that actually believe rainbows were literally giant serpents rubbing their backs against the sky.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of different myths about those.
Yeah,
used to know them much better.
Yeah. And then just there's a few here that I would like to personally highlight just for fun. This is Bazanga.
The first wave.
Bazanga. That needs to be a catchphrase now. Instead of Bazinga, it should be Bazanga from now on, with Kaiju fans. I don't know. I might be willing to get a toy of this one just because he does look pretty cool, and he's a very effective first opponent in the show. And then I'm also a big fan of this fella right here with the guns.
Dorgo. The mountain monster.
Yeah. I just like, and first off, he looks like a boss from Shadow of the Colossus, which I have to bring up because I use a remix of the Shadow of the Colossus song as the theme song for the Film Vault. And then you put the cannons on top of him. It's great. So,
and he's the first monster they save.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, they do that. And let me see, what's
Delton Doll's a cool one, I thought.
Yeah, which one is that? This one? Oh yeah.
Yeah,
I wasn't a big fan of the fight in that episode.
Yeah, the fights there were clearly where the budget restrained them a little, but in terms of design, I mean, he's a stealth fighter kaiju.
Yeah, he looks like Iron Man and Gauss had a baby.
Don't give the fan artists ideas.
Oh, yeah. Deviant Art is, it's going to live up to its name. And then we did have a handful of returning kaiju. We had Garamon, not Pigmon, it's Garamon.
Yeah.
So this is the Ultra Q version came back in this, which that was the other thing I appreciate about this too. Because of budget constraints, the last few Ultra series have been leaning heavy into just bringing back past monsters because they have suits for those already that they made for stage shows or for past season. So they're just recycling them because they can. Almost all of the monsters in Blazar are new, and I really appreciated that.
But a few exceptions, like the ones we see here, and they're from all across. But but they're well used. But most of them are new. It's
this one got a lot of attention online.
Yep.
Gavadon, like people were just going nuts, and this thing has been merchandised like crazy because it just screams plushy and pillow. Marshmallow. Yeah, you can toast that and eat
they should
it.
Actually make those. They should make marshmallows like a pack. I mean, sell them for Easter. They could be the new Peeps.
Would you feel bad sticking that on a steak and roasting it and then eating it between graham crackers and chocolate?
I just put it in the hot cocoa.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, Gabalga. Gabalga's a weird one.
Which one's Gabalga? I can't quite see.
Second wave, the weird meteor looking one above.
This one? Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's held up when he's.
Yeah, he looks like he's like a roided up armadillo.
Yeah, but like when he's opened up, he has a face in the middle of him, and
he's wild.
If he's a machine or if he's organic.
Yeah, he's
Talk
wild.
about alien.
Yeah, for sure. So I gotta say, the monsters in this are great, and I'm so glad that the nostalgia monsters were kept to a minimum.
And of course, like
in this,
I think we mentioned Red King and Gigas were in there.
Yeah, they're not on here, which is a little unfortunate. This list is far from complete.
Their episode, as I was watching it, I thought, giant gorilla, giant dinosaur-like creature, giant robot dinosaur-like creature. I feel like I've seen this recently.
Right?
Yeah. Do you think that might have been a deliberate, like they threw that combination in as like a sort of nod to Godzilla versus Kong, or like not being overt about it, but just sort of like, hey, if you're a super kaiju fan.
I mean, Earth Garon is basically a Mecha Godzilla cousin.
Yeah.
We got some comments here I want to go over. So we got some more from Enshoma. He says, I think it's safe to say the new and returning monsters in Blazar were winners based on all the weekly fan art almost every character got across Twitter. What is it? What, Pixiv? And similar art on social media sites. I thought we were calling it X now. Twix, Twittix, the artist known as Twitter, whatever.
Cesspool, that's what I call it.
Yeah, well, yeah, it is. Well, no, all social media is a cesspool.
Yeah.
What are you talking about? And then we got another comment here from Enshoma. Says Del Tondo, the stealth bomber slug. I also love how they returned in the final episode to help save the day alongside the kaiju. That
we'll be getting to that.
Yeah, we'll be getting to that, which is weird. There's as much as I say, like there are points where it reminds me of Nexus, having just finished Cosmos. There are points where it wants to be Cosmos too, which is really weird because Cosmos is about as opposite from Nexus as you can get. And what's crazy is they were made back to back.
Yep. Although the monsters could actually allow us to talk about one of our other topics, the variance in tone, because the first fan favorite monster was Gatos, that fish monster, and he also introduced us to how cartoony Blazar's powers can be.
He literally has a weaponized fishing pole.
Yep. He turns his energy rod into a fishing rod, complete with the sound effects.
Yeah, he subtly turns it. He subtly taps into Looney Tune power. It's like Roger Rabbit, Who Framed Roger Rabbit, where was that where the one I'm thinking of where they're like figuring out how to tap into tuneness or something like that? Is it Who Framed Roger Rabbit?
I think there's some of that in. It feels like it should be. Like, there's a lot of how tunes work in that movie. So
yeah.
Looney Tunes back in action.
Yeah, there's also in that. I haven't
or just in Tiny Toon Adventures, which is
true. I mean, I haven't watched any of these in for freaking ever, but I do know that like in Who Framed Roger Rabbit, like the whole thing is the Bob Hoskins has to basically embrace his inner tune in order to defeat. What was it? No, it's not
Judge Doom.
The guy's name? Judge Doom. I was like, it's not Dr. Doom. They can't do that. No, it was Doom. It was something Doom. Yeah, it's not Judge Dredd. Yeah, so he has to do that in order to win, which is the whole point.
Yep, and that's what Blazar does sometimes. There's the other time, like, he turns it into a giant claw machine.
Yeah, a giant claw machine. It's like the whole thing is it's just wild at points. But then there are like the first episode is pretty dark, literally and figuratively, because it takes place at night and it has very moody lighting. And but then you get episodes. What?
Nonstop action in that one too.
Yeah.
Battle theme.
Yeah, and then you get the stuff, and then it's relatively light. Almost cartoonish at points for a handful of episodes. So you get to the two-parter with what was the thing's name again? Nikki Kagachi. Then it subtly got serious again. Then it was light.
Then it got weirdly artistic with the Garamon episode where the aliens.
Oh, the first, music. Oh, yeah. Well, the first episode I thought was kind of artsy too, but no, the Garamon episode was a different level.
Yeah, that was like that. It might be one of the best episodes of the series.
Yeah.
Because it goes places, man.
Yeah, well,
I feel like segments. There's the whole thing about how Earth is the only place apparently in the whole universe that has music, and that moved these aliens to delay their invasion for as long as possible just so they could enjoy it.
Mm-hmm.
It's another Henri episode, which I'm sure no one was complaining about.
No.
Yeah.
No, but that is a bit of an Ultraman tradition. It always seems like, the show will set, a status quo in terms of tone and style, but then it'll throw you these curveballs. And the Akio Josoji was the one who was back in the mostly Showa and then a bit in Heisei. He was an art house director film director who was friends with Tsuburaya, Eiji Tsuburaya, and he talked him into directing episodes. And you always know when you're watching a Josoji episode of anything Ultraman, because it gets wild. It gets artsy. It gets kind of abstract.
But never to a point where you get completely lost. At least most.
No, we don't. He doesn't go full Kubrick with it, but he gets dangerously close.
Yep.
Like I saw he did a couple episodes of Tiga and a couple episodes of Dinah, and I was like, I this is just Soji. As they stood out really crazy. I've heard that the last ones he did were on Max, and I heard his episodes on Max are probably the wildest things he ever did. You know, like I had a friend who keeps Daniel Demana of the Godzilla novelization project. He keeps talking about how like there's an episode of Max directed by Jisoji where he's like, I'm still trying to figure it out, and I'm not sure if it traumatized me or not. You know, that's.
I've only just started rewatching. Well, I started watching Max, didn't pick it up, and then started it again recently. So I'm not to that episode yet, but now I have something to look forward to.
Yeah, for sure. And actually, this comment here from Enshoma, you know, he's talking about that Garamon episode. So while I never liked the music, is a human-only thing trope in sci-fi, the Garamon episode is a wonderful homage to the original Ultra Q series, showing Tsuburaya Productions' love for the past. Agree with you totally. Which actually, that's unless you have some other things to bring up for that, I think that's a good jumping-off point. We should talk about the music in this show.
Oh, yeah.
Now, I will say, I do think the theme songs, both at the beginning and end, outshine the score in this. This is not the most memorable score in an Ultra series. It's not awful, but it doesn't really stand out.
It does
probably I would say that's like the lowest tier of of actual good screen music. You know, if it's like it works, you just don't remember it, you know? And then I would say the level after that would be like it's effective and memorable in context, but out of context, it's less interesting. I would say that's basically the score to -1. It's great. It's great in context, but it's not as fun to listen to.
Yeah,
outside of that,
I finally got my CD of that. Like, I feel like the best way to describe -1 score is excluding the Godzilla suite pieces that are the ones we already know.
The Fukabe,
excluding those. Half the time it's Inception era Hans Zimmer, and the other half of the time it's Dungeon synth.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, but then the top tier. But then the top tier would be music that is great in context and is great listening outside of that context, which would basically be everything by John Williams.
I don't know. I think there is a lower tier, which is music that's just awful. Like,
well, yeah, that I'm talking about, like in terms of like actual good screen music. Those are your 3 levels, and then under that is terrible.
like Scrapper's theme from Pacific Rim Uprising.
How about
an annoying synth thing?
Yeah, I mean, I will admit, after I did my podcast episode on Uprising, I'm softer to it now, but that doesn't excuse some of the stupid things that are still in it.
But anyway,
it's nowhere close to the original.
I guess you could say that the Blazar score is utilitarian, perhaps does what it needs to do, but
basically,
but doesn't necessarily stand out aside from the openings and endings.
Yeah, well, and the score is kind of techno-y, little synthy. It's not really that orchestral, but it gets the job done. The theme songs are where I think it really excels. We get 3 in this. With it, thankfully, they keep the same opening throughout the whole thing, and I really like this opening theme.
You hear the whole version yet?
Yes,
because the music video is on YouTube for anyone who hasn't seen it yet.
Yeah, and I really like this one. The thing that's kind of weird for me with most tokusatsu theme songs is, I don't know, maybe it's because I've just been raised too much on Power Rangers and other American media, where I expect it to really just grab me as soon as I can, because that Ron Wasserman theme for Power Rangers is just like instant classic,
Oh yeah.
But and then when I started watching the Japanese stuff, they consistently had to grow on me. I think the Blazar theme probably had the shortest turnaround out of most of the modern toku that I've watched, because I like the theme song pretty quick.
I think they
it wasn't instant, but it still came pretty fast.
I think they just kind of took the anime opening approach. Just have it be a good song.
Oh yeah. Uh-huh.
I mean, the lyrics are still about the show, but on its own, you can listen to it and it's a good song.
Yes, I'm trying to look these up right now. The opening themes and all that. Okay, here's the Ultraman wiki. Let me see. Keep vamping while I look this up.
There were 2 ending themes. I gotta say, I liked the first one a little better than the second one.
I think the second one has its place, though.
Yeah, it's a bit more of a softer, winding down kind of ending, I suppose.
Okay, I just found the names of the composers. It's funny that we were talking about it. I just found it, and I don't know it looks like it has 3 people, but the first thing it says here on the wiki is composer. Bear with me here. Techno Boys Paul Craft Green Fund. All in caps, and then it lists 3 different names.
It's always all in caps when it's over in Japan.
Yeah, Tomohisa Ishikawa, Toru Fujimura, and Yohei Matsui. So there you go. But no, our theme songs, we had Bokura no Spectra, which was the opening theme by Hiroshi Kitadani. And then this one only has the first end theme listed here. So this wiki page is out of date. But the first one was called Black Star by Mindarin. I will admit that one's probably catchier, but I can't argue with the melancholiness of that second one. And I saw a really poetic description of it about how the image that it conjured in someone's mind was that it was like, someone who was a little bit older, a little bit beat down by life, but was still holding on to optimism. And still had, despite a somewhat of a loss of innocence, still had this compunction to still like just break out into dance, I think is how somebody explained it, which I thought was a really interesting description of it.
And you can, I guess maybe you could apply that to the characters.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm trying to see if I can find the name of here it is. Yeah,
like
Ignition.
Blazar? Oh, Ignition, yeah. Right. Like
wait. What
is it?
No, that was the insert theme. Never mind. No, it's Brave Blazar.
Oh, okay.
By Techno Boys Polcraft Green Fund featuring Mindarin.
You got all that? Because we're not repeating it.
Yeah. There you go. So there's two Ultraman wikis, and clearly one is better than the other. So if you're ever looking up stuff on an Ultraman wiki, go with the one with the black background. That's the one you want. Trust me. Okay. So yeah, like I was saying, I'm a big fan of these here. I would say this is probably the best opening theme since the one for Z. Z had a banger. That one took me a little while to get used to, though. But that ended up becoming a banger. I mean, obviously it is because I use an excerpt of it to announce my patrons when I do shout outs on every episode. But the Decker and the Trigger themes were just okay. Which is saying something because they're remakes of some of the best Ultraman in the entire franchise, and their theme songs are iconic, especially Tiga's. So, I mean, good luck. Good luck. They might have just been better off just doing a cover.
Well, that brings up the question, which of Tiga's? Because there are a couple episodes on that DVD.
Oh, I'm thinking specifically of Take Me Higher. That is the icon. I do like the alternate theme. Yeah, the alternate theme's no slouch, but Take Me Higher is an icon. Yeah, but Trigger's theme is okay. This one was a welcome upgrade to the last few.
What
are your thoughts on the music?
I agree. Like the opening, I like me some good rock and roll, and I mean this is, I mean it's pop rock to a certain degree, but it's still really good. It starts high energy, never lets up. Earth Garen is able to dance to it. If you've seen that video, that was from a while ago.
That was so wholesome. That was so wholesome, and I kind of love it.
And of course, it syncs well with the visuals of it too. Like the way it begins has that sort of some steadily growing urgency to it as we're getting this POV shot of Gento flying through the universe. And it hits that high note right as we get the flash transition into the title. I mean, that's another good sign of a good opening, when the music and the visuals for it work so well. And the ending, that's not necessarily as vital, because the ending for Ultra series basically just replay the highlights of the episode. But the music, I mean, I think Black Star felt more in line with the opening music. So I maybe that's why I like it a little more, because it feels more like it belongs with the opening. Brave Blazar's, I guess I understand what it's going for. It's not bad. I think it's the robotic vocals that break in every once in a while. Those don't really.
Oh yeah, that sounds very, very auto-tuned.
Yeah.
I hate to break it. I hate to break it to you, music industry. I don't care what country you're from. Auto-tuning generally does not work unless you're Daft Punk. And the only reason it works for Daft Punk is because that's their persona. They're robots.
Exactly.
And they know how to use it.
I did hear Alice Cooper use it effectively at one point.
Oh yeah, well, yeah, it's because Alice Cooper is nuts, but he knows what he's doing.
Oh yeah.
But speaking of the theme, did you watch that video I sent you of the really cool fan made English cover?
I haven't yet. I clicked on it for some reason. It wanted to confirm I wasn't a robot, which hasn't happened to me when I've clicked links before.
Okay, you know what? I'm just going to rectify that now. I'm just going to show it to everybody. It's a really cool cover. And
can we do that and get away with it?
I think so. I mean, it's only like a minute long. I don't know if that's long enough for the bots to get mad at me.
I think the longest you can do with music is 30 seconds, and even I don't like pushing that. So
yeah, well, we'll see what happens.
I don't know. We could always just put a link in the description or something.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't mind. Well, I might still try playing at least a little bit of it, just to give people a flavor for it, because it's a really cool cover. And the singer who does it on her YouTube channel, she does some toku and a lot of anime covers, and she does the same thing. She does these very, very cool transliterative the English language covers, which is hard to do for sure. And I gotta wait for this to get over with. And okay.
At least you can skip it.
Follow the light, guiding your life, illuminate the path in the night, leading the way to a new day. Weaving this tale together, journeying on forever. Pulse racing, this day will make your heart shake. There is no mistaking.
Well, that gives you an idea, and we'll just stick with 30 seconds for now.
Yeah,
I will.
Good, yeah.
I'll put a link in there in the chat for anyone who wants to see it.
Yeah, that was good. And that gives you an idea, if you haven't seen the show yet, of what the opening's like. Just different language, different singer.
Yeah. So yeah, there. I got that in there. I highly recommend it. She also did an English language cover for the full version of the Ultraman Z song, and I actually switched over to that for the film Volk, so now people can actually understand what's being said. But also because I got a little tired of getting a little copyright ding that says like, okay, it's fine, but we detected a copyright thing, and I'm like, oh my gosh, we freaking bots. I mean, it's to the point now where even something that is technically public domain, they yell at you now. Every year now for Kaiju Kim's live streams, we try to play a movie or a short so that we can riff on it and watch it together. And we're like, oh, Santa Claus Conquers the Martians. That's public domain. She still got dinged. We tried watching an educational short. That one I sent you with the stop motion dinosaurs from the early 80s. We're like, oh, it's an educational short. That's public domain. Nope, still got dinged.
Is it a high quality version?
What? For Santa Claus Conquers the Martians?
Yeah, the things you get dinged for. Because like
I don't remember.
From what I've seen, like when people note stuff that's technically public domain, it's usually like the visuals recorded on a potato kind of stuff. If you go for the high def stuff, that's probably on a DVD or Blu-ray somewhere that's owned by someone. So
it's ridiculous. But then again, riff tracks literally the day of, I think, released a riff of Steamboat Willie. Yeah, because they could.
That's parody. They can get away with it anyway.
Yeah, well, I think they intentionally waited until the public domain thing, because they're like, ha.
Just like the people who made the Mickey Mouse horror movie that debuted the trailer the day of.
Apparently that is the new tradition. I guess that's the tradition now. Something goes into public domain, it gets a slasher movie. Come the heck on, people. That's a rant for another day. Someone was pointing out that basically in about 5 years, the original King Kong movie, unless something crazy happens, will fall into public domain, which I think makes some things easier, because Kong kind of has one foot in public domain already with the Lovelace novelization. So now basically all of the 1933 version will be a public domain in 5 years.
Yep.
Although I am waiting for the day that Superman falls into public domain, because I'm going to go crazy and start writing some Superman stories, because I don't think DC knows what they're doing anymore.
Yeah. Although at least we won't have to worry about a killer Superman movie with that, because they already did one with Brightburn.
Yeah, which I didn't see it, and I'm still on the fence about it. But then again, now we've got DC making that Suicide Squad game where the whole point is just murdering the Justice League. I'm like, really, guys? Really? Anyway, again, a rant for another day. So, we talked about the music, characters, tone, all that. Blazar himself. Kind of in the Nexus connections. This is just a fun little fact. This is the first finale movie for an Ultra series that's being shown theatrically, I think, since 2019. All the other ones, because of COVID, they got postponed, or and then they ended up just being streamed only. Like Z didn't get one until they made a crossover movie for the end of Trigger. That was called Episode Z, and that was only available for streaming. And then the Decker movie was streaming only, and now Blazar is getting a theatrical release,
which we haven't seen yet. So
yeah, we haven't seen it. It's not out until March.
But the trailers kept playing with every episode, because that's part of the experience.
When you got to the end of that reminds me, because you made some videos about this. Why do they feel the need to do clip shows? I don't understand that, because anytime I see that there's going to be a clip show, I just skip that week.
Well, here's the weird thing. Like the first clip show that Blazar did, which I was surprised they even have clip shows. Like I was pretty harsh on it for not really contributing anything to the story other than showing us what we already knew. And the way it was advertised kind of made it sound like it was going to contribute something. And when I posted that video, I had people going, well, you don't get it, Omni. It's a holiday over in Japan. viewing is going to be down. So of course they just made a filler episode that's going to be filled with nothing just so they can meet the quota, but it doesn't have to contribute anything. Then we got the second recap episode, but that actually did contribute stuff. You remember that's where Scarred's sort of semi off duty, like there are no monsters to fight, and that's where we first learn that there is some sort of cover up going on. We get a little more insight into what the characters are like when they're not facing a crisis, and I'm just sort of like, okay, what was the first episode's excuse? And then we had those 2 weird animated ones later on. I think,
and they're not even official episodes because they're not numbered.
Yeah, it's weird.
I don't understand it. If when we're talking like in the middle of the show, I mean, I get it for practical reasons. Like, well, then just take the week off. I mean, I don't know why you have to have something there all the time. It's not like when when we're between Ultra series and Tsuburaya, we'll just do these quote unquote series that are nothing but clip shows. It's like, oh, it's Ultraman Zero, and he's hosting this look back on different things in the Ultraman universe. I'm like, okay, fine, that's cute and all, and I get it. It's you're doing it to maintain some brand awareness while you're finishing up on the other show, because you're not making a 50 episode show where as soon as this one's done, bam, next week the next one starts.
Yeah,
I get it, but why in the middle of the show? I mean, and it's so unnecessary anymore. I don't think in this age of VOD anymore, clip shows are kind of pointless anymore.
Yeah. I mean, back in the day where like you might have had an ongoing plot and you might need a reminder every once in a while of what's happened because there's a big thing that's about to happen, and you can't just go back and rewatch everything so easily. Then it would have made a bit more sense, though. Again, with the advent of home media, those are the episodes you always skip over. But here, like, again, there's only one that actually contributes anything. It's still a clip show, but what's in between those clips, I feel, does still justify its existence, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've seen a few where they at least try to have some fun with it. Like, I know that the Neo Saban era of Power Rangers is just notoriously bad altogether, but they always made the clip shows their holiday episodes, which makes it kind of predictable and lame. But with a couple of them, they at least tried to have some fun. Like there was this one where it was just showing a bunch of defeated monsters and basically the monster afterlife, and they're just hanging around and complaining about the Power Rangers. It's like, oh, how'd they get you? Well, this is what happened to me. And then they would cut over to them what happened to them when they were fighting the Power Rangers, and it would cut back and they're like, really? That's how they got you? That's sort of a thing. So at least they're trying to have some fun with it. But
honestly, the best clip show episode of anything I've ever seen was from Ed, Edd and Eddy, because the clips were actually still new things. You remember that one?
Yeah, I didn't watch Ed, Edd and Eddy. I remember I grew up without cable.
Oh my word. I mean, the whole thing's out on DVD now. You should check it out. It's a very well-made show. But like, they had an episode that was a clip show, but the clips were not from any previous episodes. They were brand new things made for that episode. And at the end of each one, they'd be like, I don't remember that.
Yeah. Sometimes I've thought about as a joke, like when this episode is coming out, but there was a part of me that kind of wanted as a joke to when I covered All Monsters Attack, which notoriously has a bunch of stock footage in it. I almost was like, what would be funny? It would be funny if I just excise clips of the previous episodes I did on the movies that are in that one and just played them in there. But then I realized that's a surprising amount of work.
Yeah.
You may as well just make a new episode.
I mean, you could also do a framing device where it turns out there's some child who was just dreaming the whole episode.
You're getting a little bit ahead of yourself there with me. Anyway, we'll talk after the show. But Yeah. So I think we've covered basically everything thoroughly, but you had a lot of points that you wanted to bring up regarding the last couple episodes, our 2-part finale here, which I was pretty impressed with. There's still some unanswered questions. Most of it having to do with Blazar himself, I would say.
And the true nature of the V99 and
the V99.
We never actually see them. We just see the monsters they send and their ships.
Yeah. When they start, they keep talking about like what do they call it? The first wave, the second wave, third wave, and all that. I was getting Ava flashbacks, so it's like, oh, first impact, second impact, third impact. So there's still some unanswered questions, but they play around with some really interesting things. Blazar separates from Gento to save his life. And then he just ends up adrift in space after picking a fight with a monster on the moon. It's always exciting when Ultraman fights a monster on the moon. And then our science patrol team basically hauls him back to Earth.
That's a great moment. Like, we don't leave a friend behind. So
yeah, we don't leave a friend behind. And then so they literally drag him back to Earth, and then he crashes in the middle of the city. And Gento he can barely walk at that point. He's just so worn out, and he's trying to take care of the crisis without Blazar's help. And then there's that wonderful scene that was a little bit surprising. It's rare that you see a thing where the Ultra separates from the host and he continues to exist in some form. Usually it's rare that they even separate, but if they do separate, you usually don't see stuff like that happen.
Because sometimes they aren't always separate entities.
Yeah. And although funny enough, I think one of the first times I can remember seeing that was in that American show. Ultraman Powered or Ultraman the Ultimate Hero. They actually did that where the Ultraman just says, no, I have to go fight these guys. I have to go fight. It was Zeton. I have to go fight Zeton. I'm probably going to die. I don't want you to die. So I'm going to leave you behind. I'm going to go fight him, and, I think Gento is just assuming, I don't think Blazar made it.
Yeah.
And you know what? He's like, I have to go finish this. I have to go finish this, even if it means I have to die. And then Blazar actually gets up and talks to him. It's the first time we've actually heard him talk for real.
Apparently.
And he uses this little, it's not a catchphrase. It's more like something that Gento says to himself to keep himself centered, basically, which is, I've got this. It's such a simple phrase, but the writers know how to utilize this. So even though it sounds kind of common and almost cliche, in the right context, it gives it weight, because he actually just gets up and he says, we got this, because this is the first time we've ever heard him talk.
Well, coherently, like I said.
Yeah.
We already mentioned he's very loud, very
He's loud. He screams. Thankfully, he screams less as the show goes on.
Yeah.
But he still screamed a lot.
He really likes his rye bread.
Rye! Yeah. And then they remerge to go deal with the problem. So that's one major highlight. But I think you really wanted to talk about the end.
Yeah.
When we find out it's like, hey, because we're like, what's all this intrigue with these government guys? There's a cover up going on here, and it turns out, when the V99 showed up, we shot them down, not knowing what they were, and then they kind of got angry at us, and that's why they keep sending monsters.
Yeah, and it was interesting the way they tied that all together. First of all, they actually do tie it all together. We've recently, as of this recording, come off the end of Monarch Legacy of Monsters, where they also had a government conspiracy involving monsters everywhere, and yet by the end it's just sort of like nothing has been resolved. Wait for season 2 if it gets ordered. But here they actually did go ahead and say, like, here are all of the answers that we've been building up, and it's all satisfying even. And in particular, like, they tie in all the monsters that were part of it all, of course, but there's also that interesting approach where they where Emmy says, we believe that you did the best thing that you could do back then based on the information you had. With the information we've got now, continuing the violence just isn't going to work. We especially can't do it knowing that you kind of shot first, and like we're the aggressors. We're not necessarily the bad guys, humanity, but we drew first blood without really thinking.
Yeah.
And of course, that was why Earth Garen was built, because he was supposed to save the world from these aliens when they arrived, and he did, but not in the way you'd expect. Because by this point, he's got the full AI going. He can talk. He can kind of think for himself, even though he still has to be piloted. And it's also revealed he can communicate with the aliens because he's got some of their technology built into him, if I remember correctly, right? Because
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, they did the whole Roswell crash reverse engineer thing. I mean, they hinted at that with that one weird sea monkey alien, of course. But it's curious because Earth Garen's the sidekick for most of the series. He doesn't have a single victory to call his own. He always gets knocked out of the fight, or he's lucky enough to land a blow at the same time Blazar does.
Mm-hmm.
But you can't really look at that and say, well, he won. And
in one episode, he was the monster of the week.
Yeah, the one with the washing machine.
Yeah.
We keep coming back to that.
Yeah, we do. Now, we do get some returning aliens in that. They were from Ultra 7.
Yeah. So, like, even though I did still like him, towards the end, I was starting to wonder, like, he failed so many times. Like, without Blazar there, Earth would have been destroyed 30 times over at this point. So, what is his purpose? Is he actually going to be useful? And at the end, it turns out he is. He is... Well, while the actual fight with Valoran still goes in the direction of they have to work side by side, and Blazar is ultimately the one who finishes the monster off, it's Earth Garen who ends the invasion. And he doesn't do it by shooting or punching or anything. He does it by contacting the aliens and sending them a message that they at least understand.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you alluded to this earlier, how Blazar seems like a combination of Nexus and Cosmos is specifically, he was meant to be the pacifist Ultraman.
He's the yeah. Let me explain that.
Yeah, I haven't seen it
because you've only seen only seen the first movie
and a couple of episodes, but
yeah, Cosmos is the show. The show, well, the first movie especially is definitely for kids. I think the show is, especially early on, is really meant to be for kids, but then it gets a little weird as time goes on. And the last two movies get a little, and the other two movies get a little weird when it comes to that. But then you get to Nexus, and Nexus is clearly meant for adults, but not in the sense where it's like hyper R-rated, like it's on HBO, and there's like decapitations and boobs and swearing and all. No, it's just more it's a little bit more violent. It's darker, and is very grown up with its storytelling.
It's actually,
which is how I like it, because honestly, it's just throwing in a bunch of salacious content like that into your stuff and calling it adult, like, that doesn't make it adult, guys. It really doesn't. But anyway, Cosmos is a pacifist. For all intents and purposes, he's a pacifist. He doesn't want to kill the monsters. His host is the same way. He's like, I would rather save monsters, not kill them. So he tries, instead of doing a specium beam and blowing them up, he will do his finishing move, pacifies the monster so they're not aggressive anymore. And then
they've been duplicated, in which case apparently he does kill them.
Yeah. And then, well, Well, no, that's because there's this alien entity called Chaos Header that will possess the monsters, and then he learns a new technique where he can expel the Chaos Header from them, so he can separate them. And then he takes them, or the Science Patrol team in that one, there was eyes is what they're called. They would take them to an island that's basically a preserve, so because the world needs more monster islands. There's so many of those, but anyway. So now there were episodes where he went up against a truly malevolent force, and I'm like, okay, because I'm like, that's the obvious thing you do. You make the pacifist fight something that he can't pacify. That's what makes the Borg such great villains in Next Gen, especially for Picard, because Picard is the diplomat. He wants to talk his way out of a fight. He can't negotiate with the Borg. Not at all. So, and they played into that a bit, and it had some kind of mixed results, especially at the end. It felt kind of muddy at the end where they go so far out of their way, because they give you the backstory on what Chaos Header is, and they're trying to say like, yeah, the Chaos Header has done a bunch of malevolent and awful things, but it was created not really good or evil. It's just carrying out its programming. And I'm like, okay, you're getting kind of murky here. I don't care if you're trying to say, well, it wasn't made evil. It's just, turned that way because the thing literally said, I'm going to wipe out everything because this is what my programming tells me. And I mean, it thankfully didn't end with something goofy like Cosmos hugging the thing and then it stops being evil. But he does basically redeem the thing at the end. And I'm like, this is just weird. And it's not working, guys. This is not working. Here it does. So, like I said, I was like, this got the Cosmos thing. It did the Cosmos thing, and it makes more sense here.
Yeah, because you can say it was basically a misunderstanding.
And it was they're as you talked about earlier, our heroes are literally throwing off all of their weapons, all of their power-ups, and just holding themselves up with their arms outstretched and just like, stop it, please. And then the monster still shoots at them, and they just take it.
Yeah.
They just take it until our human heroes, are able to negotiate with the V99, and then they say like, all right, clearly it was a misunderstanding. We're sorry about that. So we're not going to invade. But here's the thing. Unlike in Cosmos, the pacifism thing gets rewarded, but then they're like, okay, we're done. And they're like, oh, we're done? Okay, now we kill it.
The
monster's still running amok.
Yeah.
They sent it there, but they're not controlling it.
And they're not going to bring it back either.
Yeah. So we still get an exciting action finale here.
I guess you could rationalize that by saying, well, they've got a giant robot and a giant of light, so they've got this.
Yeah.
But still,
to quote Gento.
Yeah. Still, I mean, little bit callous, but I mean, humanity did shoot first, so I guess it's kind of like, we don't exactly owe you guys. So
it's kind of like it's like if someone shot a missile at somebody, and then the two sides negotiated while the missile's on its way, and they're like, okay, well, that was just going to be, the missile was just the start of our invasion. So, okay, fine, we won't invade you, but have fun with the missile. Because we can't stop it.
Yeah.
Because that's the impression I get. They send the monsters, they're not controlling them.
Yeah.
They're just letting them loose.
So Valeron is one heck of a monster.
Right. Yeah, let me see if I can. I'll look up a picture of him.
He's powerful enough to potentially knock the moon out of its orbit. And he could potentially destroy the Earth. Because he just leaves bombs behind him.
And they're gross. They're these bio bombs.
Yeah.
Ugh. Yeah, and he looks gnarly. Let me.
Like this weird combination of an earthworm and who knows what else.
Yeah. Here he is.
Yep. Yeah, there he is in all his alien weirdness.
Would you expect anything else?
Like his head gets weirder.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he certainly did prove to be a good final villain compared to all the other monsters, even the other two-parter ones.
Mm-hmm.
So and of course he's the one that actually not only is he defeated by Blazar and Earthgarum, but his bombs are gotten rid of by other terrestrial kaiju, which again, like,
they eat them.
Yeah. And they're the ones.
That just amuses me to no end. They ate the bombs.
Well, what else are they gonna do? And of course, we even got a hint before then that was going to be the case with the Teganular stuff. Even back in the first episode, where the whole thing is we have to stop him, or if he absorbs too much, he'll explode, and who knows how much of the area he'll take out. And instead, all he does is he fires a beam into the sky, and there's that moment where Blazar's just like, well, that was weird, but anyway. and you know, it is weird at first, but then you see the later episode where the Teganulars are all over the place, and we learn, oh, they're actually firing at something that's coming towards us. Like, then part of the way you can tell when a series is really well written is when you can actually look back at something that seemed random at first and go, oh, now it makes sense. And that was one of those. I mean, that it's not like the monsters that showed up to eat the bombs at the end were all good guys. Like, the Deltan dolls were all clearly destructive, but then you had Damaga and the younger Damaga, who were clearly sympathetic in their episode.
That was something else that happened in Cosmos as well, as the monsters that Cosmos saved all showed up to help out at the end too.
Not all of them show up in this one, obviously, but the ones that were recurring, or the ones that were clearly sympathetic, they came back.
And I think, was it in Z? I think some of the monsters in Z came back to help too. Well, like I said, like, it handles the whole non-violence thing very well, because they're like, we can't solve this with violence.
Yeah.
Because that's just going to beget more violence. They're sending an invasion fleet. They think we're the aggressors. We can't do this. And then they talk it out. It's it's a very Honda sort of way of dealing with things, talking it out.
But it worked.
Yeah.
And it resolved most of the questions we had. There are still a few mysteries.
Yeah.
Like, I was actually expecting that there was going to be more of a connection between Blazar and the V99, because Blazar was pulled in with their wormhole technology. And then they pulled in Fardron, who they said, like, Fardron was clearly connected to Blazar beforehand. And you're thinking, like, so do they know them? They mentioned the Land of Light, but that's one of the questions we still have lingering.
Yeah, and Shoma says, Teganular, the secret hero of the series.
The giant bug.
Yeah. Yeah, so there's still some questions. I was very happy that the last scene of the show is Gento going home. It's very predictable, but it's something that we all wanted.
Yeah.
As the audience.
Because he's a family man. That's why he's doing all of this. Obviously he's not being honest with them because they don't know he's on the front lines, but still, like, they're his reason for all of this. And his son is even the reason he gets his own version of the Specium beam at the end. Handled through that little homemade bracelet.
Yep. Which I'm like, oh no, you're gonna give him like some last second power up or something with this. Are you gonna Bandai this up? No, thank goodness they don't Bandai this up.
Yeah,
some last second power up.
I mean, it is a last second power up to a degree, but
Yeah, but not one that's going to necessitate another toy.
yeah, something you can make at home.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
No, I'm talking like he gets like a new set of armor or something,
Yeah.
or like, some sort of arm cannon or whatever.
And it is interesting that much like the way that Blazar connected with Gento at first, it's through a bracelet.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that had to be intentional, right?
Oh, I'm sure it was. And I was a big fan of the family in this and the kid. And so, it was very satisfying to see that, be the end of the show, not, some sequel baiting with Blazar or something like that, or the monsters. Nope. He goes home because that's what's important to him.
They could always do another season with Blazar if they wanted to, but clearly it's the end.
Clearly,
for now.
yeah. Clearly, it is the end, and I for one am very satisfied with it. Now, obviously, we've still got the movie coming, and not entirely sure what's going to be going on with the movie.
Yeah, because they don't subtitle the commercials.
No, they don't. No, they don't. They don't. But so themes and meaning. I don't know if we really went over that. I think that's a good place to.
We've been going over it on and off.
I feel like that's. I was going to say. I think if you've got some thoughts on that, I think that'd be a good spot to close up our discussion here because we are going on about 2 hours now.
Well, that's short for us.
Yeah, kind of.
I mean, like you said, ultimately, I do think there's a theme of maybe not full-blown pacifism, but certainly like knowing when to strike and when not to. I think they struck a good balance there. It's not going so far as to say you must never fight back ever. It's more like know when to fight. And yeah.
I was going to say, I also think that because of how Gento and Blazar were in conflict with each other there for a while, I do think there's a level of I don't know. I don't think cooperation is the right one. I feel like it's about trust, because especially for Gento, because he doesn't really understand Blazar because Blazar's so alien.
Yeah.
But then Blazar does things like interfere with him when he's not transformed. But then, and then even when they are transformed, he runs interference. He's literally punching himself in the face so he doesn't execute a monster because he's like, it has a baby. You can't kill this thing.
Yeah.
It's just protecting its young.
And there was also that one episode with who was his name's on the tip of my tongue. The alien that was like killing the ghosts of the kaiju.
Oh, I can't. Oh, I wish I could remember. That was actually one of the more interesting episodes.
Yeah, the old-fashioned samurai way of talking that Gento obviously picks up on.
Yeah,
I think that also had a certain influence in like that whole arc, even though he was there for one episode.
Yeah, and the episode with the kaiju with a young, Blazar reminded us like, you're a dad.
Yeah.
You're a dad. What are you doing? So there's a level of trust there with that. I do think Blazar learns to trust a little bit too toward the ends, especially, and I think it's more in the fact that he's like, I know I need your help, at the end there. And I think Gento and Blazar also, I think, both learn what their limits are.
Yeah.
And that they can't push themselves too hard, which is kind of basically Gento's whole plot line, right? The tried and true overworked dad thing. Now, in his case, it's because he's working a job that really does truly require a lot of his time because he is, it's like military families, the dad's got to go serve, he's been deployed, and he's got to go overseas or he's got to go do training. So he's going to be gone. I grew up with that to a certain extent because my dad was in the Air Guard. So, I knew what that was like, and that puts a strain on his family. And, there are occasions when, you do have these kind of classic superhero moments where it's like, I got to go do the superhero thing, but I can't tell him, Well, little do they know, especially when the kid is like, I love Blazar. I bet that must have made Gento feel pretty cool, right? Because he's like, yeah, and little do you know. Little do you know. So, and as usual, this is just a tried and true staple of the franchise, which it's all about. It's about optimism. It's about hope. It's about determination. And it's manifested in different ways and in different phrases, as well.
Camaraderie, of course, that's a big part of it.
Yeah. And respect is another one, especially with the Science Patrol teams. Some of them have more tension amongst them than others. Not so much in this one. They're pretty well unified in this. I love the little quirks that this team had, though. You were talking about this in some of your early, or maybe I'm thinking of somebody else who talking about how it's interesting how the level of office politics is kind of this going on with this team.
Yeah, not to the point where it gets boring, but
no, not at all. And
I actually where it becomes The Office.
Yeah, not quite there, but I love how I love how Gento surprises them all by keeping things relatively casual.
Yeah. Early on, he's like, nope, you go by your first name or a nickname here.
Yep.
And that goes a long way towards the team becoming a proper team.
Yeah. I mean, that's how you and Snazzy relate to each other, right?
Mm-hmm. And everything winds up getting a nickname. Earth Garen becomes Earthy. The van gets a nickname, for heaven's sake.
What did they call that thing again?
It was something based on the acronym for it.
Oh, yeah, because when I heard it's like, guys, do you realize what that sounds like? I'm trying to remember. It was so stupid. Not stupid. It was almost stupid.
That's the point. It's supposed to be a little bit silly.
Yeah. Oh, I just wish I could remember what it was. Someone's going to yell at us in the chat, I'm sure.
You don't still have the wiki pulled up? If they don't have a wiki for the van, then someone
a wiki for the van. Let me see. Do we have something for GGF? Does that have? Okay, wait. No, that's the characters. Others, kaiju, guest cast, voice actors, suit actors. Surprisingly, there is not a breakdown over their gear.
Huh. Well, I mean, they're not as geared up as other teams, so
right. I'm not. I'm not finding anything, unfortunately. But yeah, it has a. What is it? It's gonna bug me till I remember.
The nickname gets introduced later. I know that.
Yeah. I wish I could remember.
Yeah.
Okay, you know what? Here, I'll just do Ultraman Blazar van. Ultraman Blazar dubbing wiki. Wow, it might help if I can spell. There. Moppy.
There it is.
Because it's the scarred mop. So they called it
mobile operation.
No, it looked like it said Mopey. I'm like, Mopey? But I think it's supposed to be Moppy, but it looks like Mopey. I'm like, what?
Mobile operation.
Do you have a sad van? No, I'm just picturing like if that thing had a voice, like if that thing had a voice like Earthy, it would just sound like Marvin from Hitchhiker's Guys. Like it's just like I was like, I'm not happy. I'm having an existential crisis. Oh no, it's another kaiju.
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Just set me down anywhere, Earthy. Not like not like it matters.
Yeah. I wouldn't care if you stepped on me, or if the monster stepped on me, or if anyone stepped on me. It might even be preferable.
Oh, great, a parking ticket. I suppose it's my fault, isn't it? I didn't mention we were illegally parked.
Did the cop not see that there was a monster attacking and I needed to be in a strategic position? Why didn't he evacuate? He needs my money that much.
So as you can see, even the van gets attention.
Even the van gets attention. Yeah. Any closing thoughts?
Well, I mean, like I said, I wanted to do this because I thought it worked out really well in the long run. Blazar 2023 was such a great year for kaiju stuff, and Blazar was just one of the many great things about it, but it really stands out because of how well everything came together. It was it in some ways it was a return to form for the Ultra series, and in other ways it still figured out how to be new and interesting. So it also did away with a lot of the stuff that have been dragging recent shows down. Yeah, but Ultraman Blazar I guess I don't want to say it surprised me because I was hoping it would be good, but like there were things about it that I wasn't expecting to work as well as they did. So, yeah. If you haven't seen it, don't keep sleeping on it. You should check it out.
Yeah, I believe all the episodes are available on Tsuburaya's YouTube channel. For a while, they would each new episode would only be up for 2 weeks and then it would go away. I don't think they're doing that anymore. I think they leave them up.
This one's been sticking around anyway.
Yeah. Well, and I think they intended basically from the ground up for this to be part of their big push to the international arc. I mean, that's why it launched with a dub.
Yeah.
This is the first one I think this is actually the first one that's launched day one with a dub as part of the simulcast.
Now, of course, if it does get a physical release over here, it might not stay up. But
well, yeah. But I mean, who knows? I mean, there have been other quote unquote streaming series that have gotten physical releases and they're still on the streaming service. So it's still possible. It's still possible. But yeah, I would highly recommend it. It's honestly, I felt like it was a major step up from what I have seen of most of the new gen hero stuff. I mean, I haven't seen as much of that as I have the other eras. I've seen all of Showa. I've got most of Heisei done at this point. I'm about 2/3 of the way through Heisei. And, I've seen bits and pieces of new gen heroes. I've seen Z and Decker and Trigger, and this was such a breath of fresh air compared to that. And I hope that this becomes the model for Supro going forward. I do think we've at least heard what the name of the next Ultra series is going to be called.
It's not the one where they're crossing over the different characters, because I've seen they advertise that with the last few episodes. Is it that or something else?
No, it's not that. No, as far as I know, I mean, is that the clip show or is it an actual crossover?
I don't know if it's a clip show, but like they're advertising. It was with the last few episodes where it was like, here's Z, here's Ginga, here's Zero again, and like, I don't know. It might be.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with that one. No, it's called Ultraman Arc, ARK, which is funny because there's already an Ultraman Noah. I mean, when Trigger got announced, there were ridiculous jokes with that. Ultraman triggered or Ultraman trigger warning. It was puntastic. This one, I'm like, oh, you're just asking for more. With a name like that, it's going to be Ultraman's Arc or
Ultraman Arc and Ultraman Noah gonna make it rain.
Yeah, gonna make it rain. Yeah, there you go. I mean, like, yeah, at that point, you have to bring Nexus back just for the jokes. But it's announced only in that someone found out that that was a trademark that Tsuburaya had registered. So, which is how a lot of these tend to go. People will find out about a Toku series getting its trademark registered, and then a couple weeks, a month, or whatever later, there's an official announcement made by the studio.
Now, the real question is, will it be its own thing, or will it be in continuity with Blazar?
I don't know. But here's a little comment from Enshoma for some clarification. He says, the next series is a clip show with hosts from various past shows and separate from ARC, coming later this year.
Oh, that's what we were.
Yeah,
that's
what I figured it was. I figured it was the clip show, because Tsuburaya has gotten very good at launching their new Ultra shows really close to Ultraman Day, if not actually on Ultraman Day. So July is when you can expect the next show most likely to start, if they stay on schedule for what they've been doing. I mean, I think I literally watched episode 2 of Blazar while standing in line at G-Fest for something. I've just got my phone out and I'm just watching it. And it was the fishing one. And then I did the same thing for at Gen Con a few weeks later. I was standing in line to go buy a shirt, and I'm just sitting there in line watching Ultraman Blazar. And I'm like, this might, me watching this show might seem a little weird to some people around here, but not much, And at G-Fest, no one's going to care. So, yeah. Highly recommend you guys go check out Blazar, and because it's a really good. I think for those of you who haven't seen Ultraman and it feels really intimidating because it's such a huge franchise, you can easily dive into this one without any previous knowledge. And I feel like because it's got a lot of variance in it in terms of tone and all of that, I think it actually gives you a pretty good indication of what the breadth of the series has to offer. It's got some weird episodes and some standard episodes, some artsy episodes, So, and honestly, I think it might just be the best. I don't know. Here's an interesting question to end on the Omni and Snazzy. Does Blazar mark a new era in Ultraman because of how different it is from new gen heroes?
It could. I guess that really all depends on how well it did. I know that people like it. There's no doubt about that. The question is, did enough people like it and support it to actually send the message that this is what we want more of? I mean, I certainly hope so. With stuff like this that we are doing, leaving reviews or buying the merch that there is produced, I would hope that this is the beginning of a new era. I certainly wouldn't complain if it was.
Yeah.
I mean,
I asked because the way Ultraman is set up, it's similar to Godzilla, where you have the quote-unquote Heisei series, even though technically the first movie was still Showa. And they made more movies after that were still technically Heisei, but they gave it a different name. And then you have new gen heroes that's mostly Heisei and then a little bit of Reiwa so far, but they give it its own name. So I'm wondering if Blazar could be the start of a quote-unquote Reiwa era for Ultraman because it's so different.
It's different and yet in some ways familiar. But I'm hoping it is. Well, 2023, like I said, it was a great year for kaiju. It was also kind of the year that the kaiju genre got back to basics. You had Blazar, which was a return to form for Ultraman. You had Gamera Rebirth, which was new for Gamera, certainly, but was still very much grounded in the monster of the week, we're here to see the giant monsters duke it out kind of thing. Then, of course, Godzilla -1 felt like a throwback to the earliest Godzilla movies. So I'm hoping. I am definitely hoping.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And I will say this. I feel like and this might be a hot take for some people, but I feel like Supro is probably, compared to Toei, I think is less interested in adhering to Bandai mandates. Toei seems like it's just fully on board with that 150% at points. And sometimes I wonder if they just treat their tokusatsu as just product to churn out, where I feel like there's more.
Boy.
What? Yeah. Whereas I feel like at Tsuburaya, there's more interest in actually doing something artistic, which is why they're like, Bandai, can you just, thank you for the money, but can you kind of get out of the way?
Yeah.
Let us do our thing.
Well, like you said, they sneakily started this one before Bandai could make any interference. Maybe that's part of a long game. Maybe they're doing the same thing with Arc for all that we know, or whatever the next one winds up being.
Yeah.
And maybe this was maybe Blazar itself, in addition to being just a well-made show, was also kind of a tactical maneuver to tell Bandai, look, this is what we can actually achieve. You're not going to lose anything. You're still going to get your money from the merchandise sales, but we can still do the kind of show we want to do. All right, fine. We'll every once in a while we'll give him the toy sword, but he doesn't need one every 3 or 4 episodes.
Right. Because I will tell you, when it comes to, I notice it more with tokusatsu because I've been podcasting so much about tokusatsu the last few years, but I tend to like the entries in a franchise that take bold risks and actually succeed at them. And to a certain extent, I do think Blazar was bold and took a few risks. Now, it's probably not the boldest or most or riskiest out of the entire franchise, but given that how Supro has in some form or another kind of been, they haven't been coasting, I wouldn't say, because I've seen some episodes of Ultraman X that were actually really good. So I'm assuming that the rest of the show will be along the same lines, but I do feel like they've kind of been coasting and playing it safe. And then they're like, we really need to try something new. Let's take some risks with Blazar and do it so fast Bandai can't tell us not to. Because my favorite seasons of Power Rangers are the ones that took risks and it worked out for them. My favorite Kamen Rider shows, which although I will admit I'm not as well versed in Kamen Rider as I am other stuff, are the ones that went in bold new directions and succeeded at them. So I think that's part of where my appreciation comes with this. So one last comment here from Enshoma. He says, I think Ultraman Blazar is a good gateway introduction to Ultraman for regular kaiju fans. Straight-faced and not too convoluted, with a welcome focus on the characters and guest monsters. Yeah, and I think it also helps that you've got a as I called him, a Mecha Godzilla cousin and a sidekick with Garon, because I think that'll get people to watch.
Oh yeah,
that'll get the kaiju crowd to watch.
Yeah, it's part of why I wanted to check it out, because I thought he certainly looks intriguing.
Yeah.
And he was.
Because to my surprise, there's not as much crossover as I would think between kaiju and quote unquote, and I say quote unquote tokusatsu fans but it's in the narrow definition that people have of tokusatsu is just the Japanese superhero shows. No, it's a lot of things.
Tokusatsu literally is just special effects.
Yeah. So the kaiju stuff qualifies, and some people even narrow it even further and say it's just the Toei shows. It's like, no, Ultraman counts. Ultraman is tokusatsu. Ultraman is Henshin. I will fight anyone who dares tell me Ultraman is not Henshin.
Yeah, no, Ultraman, Gecko Kamen, Red Baron, Johnny Sacco and his flying robot, or Giant Robo, depending on who you ask. That's all Toku.
Yeah. It all counts. But strangely enough, there's not as much overlap as you would think. Not as much overlap between anime and tokusatsu either, even though they use basically the same tropes.
Yeah, well, more so earlier than today.
Probably.
These days, like, Gridman was an anomaly. Used to be you had the mecha shows where super robots fighting giant monsters. These days, pretty much ever since the 80s and stuff, mecha has been giant robots fighting other giant robots. So
you can thank Gundam for that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's a whole other live stream.
That spans multiple timelines.
Yeah. The live stream spans multiple timelines?
Depends on how many different live streams you do.
Wibbly wobbly timey wimey.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Anyway, once again, thanks for coming on here, Omni and Snazzy, and thank you to all of Omni's fans for joining us tonight and hanging out with us, talking about some Ultraman Blazar. And I hope you get, if I can get this downloaded and sent to you properly, I hope you get, plenty of hits on this when you upload it yourself. And I just save you the trouble of making a video, right?
Well, we still made a video. We just did it live.
I know. Just like, you don't have to sit down and do like your unscripted, your Omni unscripted episodes or whatever.
Well, I stand for those.
Yeah. Well, yeah. This you do, and you have a completely different background. One of these days, I need to, and you need to do a live stream where with all the toys and stuff in the background. That would be fun.
Yeah.
And again, thank you for coming, Snazzy. It was great having you on too. Not as much color commentary as I was expecting, though.
I slept through some episodes.
Oh well, I'm sure you did. And although Snazzy, who was your favorite monster on Blazar? Because I know you got opinions about monsters.
Oh boy, favorite, huh? Well, I did like Nichi Kagachi, nice and colorful. I can appreciate a colorful reptilian creature. But even though it's not a new one, Damaga's story really moved me.
Yeah. Just thought I would ask, before we sign off. But and Shoma says fandom sucks. Yeah, I know. We deal with it every day.
Twitter.
Yeah. Yeah. We deal with it every day. And he says, thank you for the good stream, by the way. You're welcome, Ed Shoma. It's been great seeing you drop by in some streams. I know you've been listening to the Film Vault now, actually, which has been making me happy. He left me some comments that I'll share in a future episode and things like that. I think it was because I did an episode on Zillafoot, and he contributed to Zillafoot.
Oh dear, that thing.
I have two friends who are in it, and I brought them onto the show to talk about being in it. Because hey, they've both been in one more kaiju movie than me. It's Zillafoot, but I've listened to every other podcast episode as far as I can find on Apple Podcasts on that movie. I have the definitive episode. I can take that to my grave. That is bragging rights for life. I have the definitive podcast episode.
That's what it'll say on your tombstone. Nathan Marchand. He has the definitive podcast episode on Zillafoot.
Yes, it's Shoma. I know you were in Zillafoot. I brought that up. Anyway, I'm going to stop with my Midwestern goodbye and actually properly end the stream. Again, thank you to everybody for joining us tonight. And go watch yourself some Blazar. You got this.